we will be discussing project plan. And this project plan this meeting have a learning objective, which is for you to understand the step corresponding to project management plan and understand the step corresponding to project planning. Okay, the project plan. When we talk about planning, this already changed the face of our process groups. If you can remember that our previous meetings have discussed about project origination and project initiation. Now we're going to the third process group, which is project planning. The knowledge area and process group matrix here describes what kind of knowledge it is needed to do the planning process group. So how to read this matrix, I'm going to talk about it a little. So we have, excuse me, tolong ya, Papi sudah minta tolong diam ya. So in this matrix, you can see that there's project integration management, project scope management, project time management, and so on. There are 10 knowledge areas here, and it's correspondent with the process group here. So we have 5 process group here, from initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. And we have come to this part, planning. Whereas in this planning, there are various management knowledge areas that needs to be used. So there are quantities of process that needs to be done here, here, and so on. And the corresponding knowledge areas that are needed. For instance, in this planning process group, you see that there are total of 24 processes. And these 24 processes is we can say divided, but I would like to say more exactly is it is consisting of many knowledge areas that needs to be addressed from number 1 to number 10 to finish those processes. So in project integration management knowledge area, there are 1 process. In project scope management, there are 4 process. In project time management, there are 6 process, and it's all contributing to the planning process group. So there's quite a lot process group here. We are going to talk about it later. Now, to develop a project management plan, we call that PMP. PMP is a process in the knowledge area of integration management. PMP process consists of defining, preparing, and coordinating all subsidiary plans and integrating. So we have many small plans inside our project, and we're going to manage those projects with a project management plan, PMP. So in this plan project, in the second process group, we will develop a project management plan. What is the PMP components? There are inputs, tools, and outputs. The input is project charter. We have discussed this previously. Output from other planning processes, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. And the tools and techniques needed to create this PMP is expert judgment and facilitation techniques. The output is the document of PMP. Let's talk about PMP inputs. So the first input is project charter. Project charter is one of the crucial input for planning. We have discussed it in the previous meetings. And output from other planning process is also considered as an input for PMP. It is consisting but not limited to these documents: scope management plan, schedule management plan, cost management plan, quality, process, HR, communication, risk management, procurement, stakeholders, requirement, cost baseline, schedule baseline, scope baseline, and the updates of PMP itself. As you can see, the PMP itself can be updated regularly. And we have bunch of other process documents that becomes an input for this planning. The third input is enterprise environmental factor. When we talk about environmental, it's not about per se environmental with biological diversity and so on and so on, but it's about the organizational culture and structure. It's about the standards that the industry adheres to and the standard that's applied in the company. This is the scope of the environmental that we're talking about. Now, what is the tools and technique for PMP? So the first is using expert judgment. Develop technical and management details to be included in the project management plan. It is to tailor the process to meet the project needs. Tailor is the keyword here, because tailoring means just like you creating a suit, then the tailor person will measure your body width, body height, and so on, so he or she can create the perfect suit for you, suit or dress. Now, the main thing about tailoring the process, we need to create the process according to the environmental organization, the environment in the organization, these enterprise environmental factors. We can determine the resource and skill levels needed to perform the project work using expert judgment. The second way, and it needs to be done also, is facilitation techniques. Facilitation is the ability to effectively guide a group event to successful decision, solution, conclusion. So it ensures that there is an effective participation and mutual understanding. All contributions are considered, and conclusion or result have full buy in accordance to the decision process established for the project, and the action and agreements achieved are appropriately dealt with afterwards. That is the target of facilitation techniques. How you going to do the facilitation techniques can depend on the organization itself. Let's say for an easy easy example is when you're using group meetings, and then you're using session discussion and brainstorming. It can be virtually or it can be physically. Now, let's see the PMP outputs. The PMP outputs, there are project scope management plan, schedule management plan, cost management plan, quality management plan, process improvement plan, staffing management plan, communication management plan, risk management plan, procurement, and stakeholder, which in turn can become inputs for the PMP revisions. PMP outputs also include milestone list, resource calendar, schedule baseline, cost baseline, quality baseline, risk register, and etc. So that's about project management plan. After we have the project management plan, then we create the project planning itself. All plans and documents can be formal or informal, generalized or detailed, depending on needs. Maybe PMP continually updated during the project. It's called rolling wave planning. And obtain approval of plan from designated stakeholders. Changes of the project management plan and subsidiary documents need formal procedures described in the change control system. And planning process group is the most important with over half of all the 47 processes in this group. Many need replanning. The keyword is here. So there's plan and then changes and then replanning again. When significant changes to the baseline is observed, when the process group of executing and monitoring is underway. Now, the content, project planning contents use a compiled document. First is the subsidiary documents. It is the scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline, performance management baseline, and the PMP as discussed above. For the rest of the presentation, we will focus to these topics: the project scope, the project scope management plan, the scope statement, and the work breakdown structure. The project scope definition. All the work involved in creating the product of the project and process used to create them. Project scope defines what is or what is not to be done. The term of scope can refer to the product and or the project. Deliverables, it means this is the outputs, are products produced as part of a project, such as hardware or software, planning document, or meeting minutes. The project team and stakeholder must have the same understanding of what products to be produced as a result of a project and how they will be produced. Second, the project scope management, to ensure the inclusion of all and only the work required to complete the project successfully. Scope management prevents additional requirement added without proper control. Because we're talking about scope here. Scope is what I'm going to do. For example, if our project is, say, the scope is building a bridge over a river. It will not talk about the gardens before or after the bridge. It will not talk about the red lights in the traffic that needs to be added before or after the bridge. It might not even include the zebra cross that are needed before and after the bridge. So that is the example of scope. When we're talking about scope, my project is doing this. I'm doing A, B, C. I'm not doing D. So if I need to do something more, like doing D, E, and F, it will need a proper control for those additions. Because in project, there are something's called the scope creep. The scope creep is thing like this. The example is like this. This person is say, hey, I want to do a project. The project is I want to walk 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Further to the right. Okay. But then he says, hey, when he's standing here, he says, hey, 1, 2, 3 is not enough. Maybe I need to do 4 steps. 4. And then when he stands in the 4th step, he says that, hey, I can see something further on. It's on the 20th steps. So slowly but reassuringly, the scope becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. This is essentially true for almost any project. But from my experience in software development project, it usually becomes a big headache when the stakeholders didn't have a valid and formal agreement beforehand. Because they say, between the stakeholders, the A said, this is the part of the project. But the B said, hey, we did not talk about that scope into our first project management scope. When it's coming to the scope of the project, we need to be very exact. We need to be very detailed about what will be done and what will not be done. So the completion of the project scope is measured against the project management plan, whereas the completion of the product scope is measured against the product requirements. So the project scope management processes in these planning processes, there are plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, and create work breakdown structure. It's called WBS. WBS, we'll talk about WBS more detailed later. The outputs of each of these processes in this planning of project scope management process, I'll give you a little rewind here. So we're talking about this one, okay? This one. Let me clear it first. Now, this is the second knowledge area, the project scope. There are 4 processes. Okay, and this 4 process is this: plan scope management, scope management plan, requirement, project scope statement. Sorry, this is a project scope management. This is, okay, project scope management plan. So, what is the plan scope management? It provides guidance on how project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled, including how to prevent scope creep, the thing that I have described earlier, how to handle change requests, and escalation path for disagreement for scope elements between stakeholders, process for creating scope statement, WBS processing, CR, and how the deliverables will be accepted. The input will be scope management plan, requirement management plan, stakeholder management plan, stakeholder register, and project charter. And the techniques that is used is expert judgments and meetings. The output is scope management plan and requirements management plan. That is the plan scope management. Second is the collect requirement. To collect the requirement, we need the requirement itself is a condition or capability that must be met or possessed by deliverables to satisfy contract, standard, etc., including quantified or documents, wants, expectation of sponsors, stakeholders, and customers. So in the requirement, we're going to collect the quality requirement, the business requirement, the stakeholder requirement, the solution requirement, the transitional requirement, and the project requirements itself. On the collect requirement components, we have the input of this scope management plan, requirement management plan, stakeholder management plan, stakeholder register, project charter. Tools and techniques will be further detailed in next slide. And the output is requirements documentation and requirements traceability metrics. How to collect it? We can use interviews. Just talk with them. Talk with the stakeholders. You can use focus group, usually in form of focus group discussions, facilitated workshops, group creativity techniques. We usually call it brainstorming. Group decision-making techniques, questionnaires, surveys, observations, and using prototypes. We give them prototypes and they say, hey, this is not good enough. We need to do this, and this, upgrade this and this, remove some of the parts, and so on. That's how we collect the requirement. Requirements documentation is the output of this process, and there are requirements traceability metrics. That is a table that links requirements to their origin and traces them throughout the project life cycle. The third is scope statement. Scope statement is developing a detailed project scope statement as the basis of the future project decisions. Project and product scope outlines what will be and what will not be included in the deliverables, including the detail of risks, constraints, and assumptions. Scope statement versus project charter, difference in which include high-level descriptions. Provides alternative, scope statement provides alternative if the budget and schedule could not meet the management expectation. The component inputs is scope management plan, project charter, Requirement documents, organizational process. Tools and techniques is expert judgment, product analysis, alternative generation, facilitated workshop. The output is project scope statements and project documents update. Okay, I'm not talking about the tools and techniques. It's the same. The output is this. A document of project scope statement will include objective, scope, requirement, boundaries, deliverables, acceptance, constraints, milestone, cost, specification, approval, requirements, and so on. Now, I'm going to talk about WBS, work breakdown structure. For a small project, usually we did not focus so much for the so many other documents that you're seeing here in the bigger project. But usually, even though the project is small, we will have a work breakdown structure, a WBS. So WBS is subdividing the major project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. And in WBS, it's a deliverable oriented. The keyword is here. Deliverable means output. And it's a hierarchical decomposition of the work to be executed by the project team to accomplish the project objective and create the required deliverables. WBS input is scope management plan, project scope statement, requirements documentation, enterprise environment factor, organization process asset, using the tools and technique of decomposition and expert judgment. And output is scope baseline and project documents update. WBS does not show dependencies between work package, but WBS dictionary does. This is the sub-document that clarifies WBS by adding additional information. The major deliverables should always be defined in terms of how the project will be organized for a project with phases, and the decomposition should begin with the phase first. Scope baseline and output from WBS is created by the project team. And the work package usually broken down to be able to delegate to a staff for 8 until 80 hours of work. This is the example. So, sir, you're talking about bunch of hocus pocus. What is the meaning? The meaning is WBS is you create the hierarchy of who doing what. So just take on this example. They want to create this is a software. Okay, this is a software that can connect in the intranet. So there are the part of it is a website design, the homepage design, the marketing page, and the selling page. So the website design, there are sitemaps, graphic decision, the programming. And the homepage design, there are text, there are image, there are hyperlinks, and so on. This is the structure, and you can delegate this later on to team 1, to team 2, team T, or usually because this is small, we can delegate some to the same team, or maybe this entire branch is one team. So actually WBS is just telling the dividing of the tasks in the project and who will be doing what. That is actually the main idea. So that's for the 4th meeting.